Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here, and today I want to talk to you about Warhammer 40,000, Kill Team, and of course the death of Grenade Spam, because Grenade Spam is dead, as it clearly says on the screen here, and therefore it must be factually correct, because anything written down is true. And I do believe that Games Workshop murdered it, as they are the ones that write the rules. Grenade Spam is gone, and so there are two real effects this has in the game. We have to find out what on earth the rest of the equipment in the game is, because let's be honest, nobody knows, and we have to discuss the knock-on effects of Team X losing grenades, not just on Team X, but also when playing into Team Y and Team Z, because I'm English so it's Z, as they won't be the same. This can completely change the meta, potentially, or have no effect at all. Who knows? So, what are the effects? As you see on screen, I've written something down, and hopefully it's correct. The first and most obvious effect is that we will now have to take other equipment for our models. Bloody disaster, I realise. The second effect is twofold and meta-dependent. So while we are trying to figure out how to run our new teams, our enemies are changing how they run theirs. The difference in power change this has is different for every team into every other team. We can't just say a blanket X is now stronger. Finally, we also have to be on the lookout for the next best thing. Grenades are still the best thing, make no doubt, but they are all a maximum of pick one each. Why did I say it that way around? They are all now a maximum of one pick per battle each grenade. So one frag, one crack, etc. So now, when looking at equipment lists, we must decide how we value different things. In this video, I will not be giving you a de facto 10 points of equipment to take and saying use X in Y situation. I will simply be giving a top 3 equipment picks and telling you why they're good. Per faction, I've done a very poor job of explaining what this is. If you are too excited and simply can't wait, each faction's slide is bookmarked, so you can just jump straight to it or you can watch the whole thing. Either way, I'd love to know your thoughts, as when it comes to finding the new hotness, it is ultimately a community effort, so your input is needed, as it will either highlight something I missed or at least let the Gestalt community perception be known, right or wrong. Example of power levels not being a simple binary is, thanks to my amazing wordplay, AdMech. Binary, AdMech. Never mind. Also, Warp Coven. Neither of them have grenades, therefore they lost nothing in this recent nerf. Of course, the Clade lost more nothing than the Coven, but whatever, I suppose. Today, I want to talk about the equipment your faction should look into now, and how badly the grenade nerf will affect each specialist team. You can jump to your faction slide and watch the whole thing. The next slide, however, is subscriber only. So, please look away if you are not subscribed to my channel at the moment. That's right, this is the new double hello slide. No, it's not a TikTok dance, it's a far more demographic appropriate sort of slide. Does that joke even make sense outside of where I wrote it? If you want access to this double hello in the next video, like, subscribe, make a pact with the Chaos Gods, leave a comment, you know, the huge. If you really like what I'm doing, I have a Patreon, and any support would be greatly received. There are a few benefits for you if you poke around over there. I also have merch in what I attempted to make a kind of subtle, if you know you know, but otherwise you don't think I'm weird, design. It's literally a Kill Team dog whistle now that I think about it. I also have a Kill Team podcast called Vantage Point you should check out, and the largest Kill Team Discord server. On a less Kill Team related note, I have a 40k, Age of Sigmar, and in theory one day War Machine channel you should look at called Full Scale Wargame. Finally, if you like this video, sharing it around, either with word of mouth or on the hive of scum and villainy that is the internet, would be great. Thank you. Diving straight into the video, because when you have to cover lots of factions, just everything takes ages. First up are the Novitiates. Why? Because that's how Wikipedia orders the specialist teams. They're first, so there you go. And when looking at new equipment for them, keep in mind that they are still taking one crack as default, always. Frag is situational, but we're ignoring that for now. Picking new equipment for Novitiates is easy because they have great equipment, to be entirely honest with you. I've gone with Icon of Faith and Sainted Reliquae because the strength of Novitiates is in their faith points, and both of these give you faith points. 2 Icons of Faith and a Relic are easily netting you an extra 7 points throughout your game. That's an entire extra turn of faith. Auto Chastisers, however, are a great 1 EP pick. Giving yourself Ceaseless is awesome, no cap, bet. Why did I write that in my script? I don't know. When it comes to how Novitiates are affected by the grenade change, there are 2 things to consider. Firstly, their original reliance on grenades. Secondly, their main rival's reliance on killing them with grenades. They had access to grenades and grenades were good, but honestly, limiting them to 1 crack or frag really doesn't hurt them that much. This is not a big nerf for them. For one of the most powerful factions in the game, the grenade change, not that much of a big deal. On the flip side, as a primarily melee team, they were always content to hang around on conceal until they were ready to engage, and they would take a big hit from frags, so there being less grenades out there is actually a bit of a buff to them. I think that Novitiates have gone up in power from this change, and I think that very few teams will be able to rival them. And then, Pathfinders, Void Dancers, Novitiates, they're all around equal. So obviously Hunter Clade and trying to figure out what their power level is in regards to the grenade nerf is almost irrelevant. Because, not because they didn't have access to grenades, but because they had such huge buffs in other ways that rating them in relation to only the grenades is silly. Long story short, they got stronger in an unmeasurable sort of way, and if you're suddenly interested in Clade like never before, then throw Optimized Gate on everyone that can take it, plus Servo Skull and Mechadendrites when needed, then enrich rounds when not. A simple one for Hunter Clade, and that's probably why I only gave them 1 picture on their slide. Vetguard were one of the worst abusers of grenade spam because they could equip cracks on GA2 models. 2 cracks without any sort of workaround is broken. 2 frags with no play around twice in the game is also pretty broken. So this is probably the team that have taken the biggest hit in terms of their relative power level to any other team, in fact. The only teams they've really had a buff against would be Pathfinders, who can no longer 5 EMP grenade spam against them. So that's now a little bit more of a solid matchup for them. However, they're also the best possible team. So is it enough? Well, probably not, if I'm honest. In power level terms, I think that whoever is good with them will still be doing really good, but I think that overall win rates will probably slip a bit from the absolute top tier to beneath Pathfinders and around the same level as Corsairs. Regarding their equipment without grenades, well, of course they're still taking a frag and a crack, but then you want to look into the Rosary, a great piece of equipment. Anything that lets you ignore damage really messes with the maths of the game and is, in my opinion, a must take. Hot Shot Capacitor is turning your guys into bolters, so you can't complain there. And then a Chronometer, because sometimes you really need initiative. Pro tip, always use the Chronometer on turn 2, do not wait any longer than that. Of course, the Phobos haven't been out long enough for this change, to change any sort of established meta for them, but no grenades is still no grenades. I won't speak to their respective power level, but losing the ability to 3 crack is a nerf for them without a doubt. The team suffers from a lack of AP and this removes it further. However, one of their biggest issues was AP weapons negating their naturally good armor saves. So in this instance, it's actually, weirdly, a buff for them. For their equipment, they now need to look at smoke grenades. Smoke grenades, despite being grenades, are the best. All smoke, all the time. However, while smoke grenades are good, actual smoking, bad. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. When it comes to the Legionary, the lovely Legionary, they kind of have the same issue as Phobos. They've lost access to crack, but despite that crack, was never that big of a crutch for the team, and so this is actually a bit of a buff for them. They have plenty of ways to get kills. They're a melee team, so can spend your first rounds hiding before taking the initiative with some big charges. And now, they won't get cracked nearly as much. I'd place them around the same level as Corsairs and Wyrmblade. Regarding equipment, they have some great options. Aggression Stimulants is a must-take, and then Tainted Rounds plus Malefic Blades makes a regular bolter guy essentially a mobile heavy bolter with the best equipment in the game tacked on. Little bit crazy, not going to lie. The Blooded were all set to be the first 4-crack team, but now they're a 1 diabolic team. Huge nerf for the Blooded here. The crack spam was such a good fit for Blooded, as they had exactly 3 models that didn't have any ranged weapon, so despite them not having a defined meta, this is definitely the team that has taken the largest hit from this change. Also, in my opinion, their equipment isn't really very good. So this is pretty tough for them. And I think quite clearly what's happened here is I didn't even finish their slide. I didn't even change the equipment that I would say you should take with them. So that's really just top tier for me. In reality, you're still going to give a frag and a crack to 2 of the guys that don't have a ranged weapon. And after that, I don't know. It's a big issue for Blooded. That's all I'm saying. Similar to the Clade, this is the other no grenades team, the Warp Coven, of course. In theory, this is now the weakest specialist team. Good news is that as a power armor team, your enemy losing the ability to unleash the Kraken on you is a pretty big buff. For whatever reason, this is a relatively low player count team, not really getting many picks when it comes to the BCP app from what we've seen from data. So getting hard feedback on how much this has affected them will take time. But I'd say they will remain hanging out with Kommandos and Vetguard average players, and we won't see them suddenly jump up with the win rates. Now, for those of you that have been watching through this entire video, not just jumped straight to the Warp Coven, you might be surprised to hear me say they're around the same level as Kommandos and Vetguard, when it's obviously widely accepted that Kommandos aren't doing great right now, and Vetguard are the top team. But I did say the average players of those teams. Something that I think is well captured in overall win percentages as opposed to number of podiums. And obviously no equipment changes for Warp Coven as they never had grenades. So just take whatever you were taking. When it comes to the Corsairs, losing access to plasma grenades is exactly what the grenade spam nerf was all about. Apart from the whole Vetguard 2 cracks on GA2 models, ignore that. But apart from that, making sure that Corsair Voidscarred don't take plasma grenade spam is the real reason. Because the plasma grenades are good, but not so good that you should take 3, and this forces you to look elsewhere. Also, the entire team is effective at the 6-inch range, and so making them use grenades instead of their pistols seemed kind of weird. However, sadly, the equipment they have access to is also a little bit weird. There's 2 pieces that are great and a buff, and buff is a specific off. What am I saying? There are 2 great equipment pieces that buff a specific operative. Yes, that made sense. To be what they should have always been, which is the Pathfinder Cloak and the Lodestar Helm. But then there's kind of nothing. So yeah, the Pathfinder Cloak and the Lodestar Helm are now auto takes, and then the Mist Field because there's nothing else. Yeah. Of course, in reality, you're still taking a plasma grenade as well. When it comes to power level, I don't think this will have much of an effect on the team, as they were never forced into full-on grenade spam. Despite its effectiveness, you weren't forced that way. But also they have the decent middle ground versus grenades where a crack is overkill and a frag isn't really enough. So if I had to rate it one way or the other, I'd say this is a very slight buff for them in the grand scheme of things. I'd say they're going to sit comfortably between Legionary and Kommandos now. Void Dancers, are a personal dispassion of mine, so accept some bias here. But the loss of prismatic grenades really isn't that big of a deal to the Void Dancers for similar reasons to the Corsairs, but doubly so because Harlequins get to dictate terms of engagement thanks to all of their rules. Which we don't need to go over again because I'm going to give myself a stroke if I have to. From a power perspective, however, Void Dancers were never overly concerned by the grenades flying their way, as Domino Field doesn't work within 6 inches. So this has been a pretty neutral change, and to make myself feel better, I will say that Void Dancers have, if anything, gone slightly down in power, as their enemies will now be taking more appropriate equipment instead of relying on grenades that frankly didn't hurt them. When it comes to equipment, they probably weren't spamming grenades, so again, no real change here. So I kind of fill out this slide with the most bizarrely pointed support grip, right? How does that make sense? And then the mandatory death mask and, you know what, some pure psycho crystals, why not? Have fun with that, I guess. Basically, you're taking what you were taking anyway. Oh, my Wyrmcult. Look at both of these models painted by me, but why did I bother? Why did I bother? So the poor Wyrmcult taking nerf after nerf to their main cheese strat, hiding. First losing the Cult Ambush reroll, which was amazing. Now dropping to only being able to use one blasting charge. Honestly, this might make hiding no longer be an automatic play. Power level wise, this is a definite nerf for them. Frag or EMP grenade spam in return had always been pretty effective against them, so nice to not have to worry about that anymore though. I'd say they stay around the same level as they are now, with Commandos above them and Warp Coven just below. Equipment wise, I'd say you need to relook at Spotlights, a great tool for the Wyrmcult. Climbing ropes are always good for extra maneuverability, and the Cult Talisman to make one of your guys just that little bit more survivable is nice enough. But honestly, compared to the first two, a bit of a niche pick. Over to the Commandos. Oh, isn't that a lovely paint scheme? I wonder how that was done in literally 1 minute flat. Oh, well, I suppose you'll have to wait for my eventual hobby video on it, won't you? Kommandos had their nerfed grenades already, and so I don't see anyone really running multiple dynamites, and stick bombs are just frags. Instead, Kommandos get the always great smoke grenades and climbing ropes as two easy to recommend pieces of equipment, and then I guess a stun grenade. I don't know. Something I see most people glossing over, but you know, it does have its place. Power level wise, Kommandos are in a bit of an odd spot in the meta right now, but honestly, I don't believe their month of May's win rate, as seen in like slide number 3 all the way back in the introduction, is indicative of a terrible team. So when I say that the effect of the team in the meta hasn't really changed, that's not really a negative. I just don't think this really does huge things for Kommandos. As a medium-sized team, they typically have the space to stop frags hurting them and can absorb a crack and still win. All things considered, this is a slight buff and leaves them in a similar position with Warp Coven and Wyrmcult, but really, I don't see this changing too much for the team standing, to be honest. As similar to Vetguard, what's really bringing down the win rates of Vetguard and Kommandos is the fact that they were the start of the teams and so many people play them regardless of, you know, people are playing them in tournaments because they have them, not because they want to go hard in a tournament. Pathfinders are, as always, totally fine with this nerf to them if you like the models on screen, despite how poorly I've cropped them out. That is thanks to, on Instagram, he's called The Grim Wargaming. See the bottom left of the screen there? Go check him out. But yeah, Pathfinders don't care about this nerf. Make no mistake, this is definitely a nerf to them, however, and it definitely weakens them in relation to other teams, but it's kind of totally fine because they already have well-known good other equipment to run, and this is only removing a single strat that they really didn't need in the first place. So now we look primarily to high-intensity marker lights and I suppose targeting optics and climbing ropes. And honestly, they're still absolutely top tier, so can hang with Novitiates and Void Dancers totally fine. Yeah, Pathfinder's really strong, don't care about this change. Oh, look at that. How about that? We're back to the first slide. What could this possibly mean? Grenade spam is dead. The meta is changed. And we now know the amazing effect on the meta that I have predicted with 100% accuracy. I was supposed to also tell you what is the hot new equipment, but having written down everything, turns out that's an entire other video. And so will probably be, my next video once I get another slideshow done. Long story short, there are 6 types of equipment that need to be covered, and they all have pros and cons. For now, just consider the categories: rerolls, mobile terrain, offensive, defensive, debuff, and movement. Ultimately, I believe that the grenade spam change is genuinely a very good thing for the game. The game was very clearly, in my opinion, not designed around spamming grenades. And actually, I don't care that it changes the power levels of different teams. We should be striving to get the game be as it was envisioned, and then having tweaks. If every player finds the same cheesy broken strat, that fundamentally changes how the game is played, that's not good. It would be similar to, let's say, every single team that has access to plasma takes a plasma. There you go. If you have a gunner option and you can take plasma, you take plasma before any other gun. Don't get me wrong, the other guns you can take, there's a little bit of a question there. Do you want the flamer? Well, that can be useful sometimes. Do you want the melter? That has its use. But if you have plasma, you take plasma. A damning indictment there, I apologise. Oh, whoops. It's like the double hello slide, but it's a triple hello. This is the triple hello slide. The ultimate slide thanking you for watching the whole of the video. It's a truly special slide, as you can only view it if you watch the whole video. Truly a wholesome blessing from a humble creator to a glorious viewer. Once again, consider checking out my Patreon, my merch, my Discord, my podcast, and my other channel. And don't forget, if you like what I do here, share the wealth and let others know. Thank you very much. I hope you've had a good day and continue to have a good day. Goodbye.